Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to Lyoko Retrospectives. And before we start the episode, there is something I want to talk about that I kind of started talking about last week but kind of didn't really go that far into. Now, basically, if you watched my vlog last week, in the beginning of that episode, I talked about how for whatever reason a majority of the Lyoko episodes were no longer available on Amazon. Well, after a week now that a week has passed and my voice is better and I don't feel like I'm a complete pile of shit. I've since gotten more information on it, and thanks to Colton Lyoko Meme Lord, who you can find on Twitter, his Twitter handle is at Lyoko Meme Lord. Essentially, he pretty much let me know that for whatever reason, a majority of essentially out of all the 90 plus episodes of Lyoko that were available on Amazon Prime Video, only 23 are left, give or take. Now, this doesn't ultimately affect these vlogs, as there are other ways of watching Lyoko besides Amazon Prime Video, such as YouTube, which is what I was originally going to do before I decided to do Prime instead, and Netflix, as Lyoko is on Netflix now. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was because on the off chance you were watching these with me or were interested in watching Lyoko at all, if you it's Amazon Prime is no longer a viable option. Like I said, there's YouTube and Netflix, so if you're interested in the show, it's probably best you watch those. But pretty much, I'm just saying that if you were watching these along with me or were interested in watching it yourself, Amazon Prime is no longer a viable option, as while it does have some of the episodes, the majority of them are no longer available. I don't know why this is happening. Colton threw out that may be the deal, that they didn't renew their deal with Amazon Prime, and as a result, a lot of the episodes are now unavailable, which might be the case. Which it might be the case because they're streaming on Netflix now as well. So it would be kind of a little strange to have the show be on two streaming services because of the whole streaming wars thing. But bottom line, it is what it is, and I just kind of wanted to bring it up here now that I'm in a better state of mind. And and again, if you were watching this along with me or considering watching them, Amazon Prime is not a viable option. So sorry, but anyway, show must go on. I'm now watching the shows through YouTube, and today we're going to be discussing episode 71 of Lyoko, Maiden, Voyage, and kind of going off what happened in the last episode. Now that the Lyoko group has the Skid Bladner, or as they're calling it, the Skid, they kind of are chomping at the bit to give it a test run, as this is supposed to allow them to enter the digital sea and allow them to traverse the network. While Jeremy, of course, is a little hesitant to do this because they're still testing it out, and they're still working out all the bugs. But the group tells Jeremy, "Come on, we need to test this so that we need to test this. You said we need to do this because we need to know if we can traverse the digital sea, and if the whole thing is functioning." And eventually, the group manages to wear Jeremy down until he agrees, "Okay, fine, we'll test it." We'll test it after lunch, especially because it was like fire safety drill day, so all classes were canceled. So that means they now have a viable excuse to not to do this test. As such, the group goes to the factory after finishing lunch, and they all get virtualized into Sector 5 so they can go directly to the Skid. And I actually do like how they kind of dock it, because I just kind of going on a slight tangent. Essentially, how they get on the Skid is not like they all walk into a pod. Essentially, there is a teleporter pad that each of them have to step on, with Ulrich, Odd, and Yumi going on, because there are like 5 slots, and it's like there's one in the center and the other 4 are dotted around it. Ulrich, Odd, and Yumi go on the ones on the outside, while Alita takes the one in the interior, takes the center one, because that one leads directly to the pilot's chair, since she'll be piloting the whole thing while the rest of them will be providing support. I'm mentioning this specifically because one of the details that I do kind of like... Sorry, adjusting this slightly. Anyway, one of the details I legitimately like about this scene is the fact that there are actually 5 teleporters on there, complete with 5 slots on the Skid, the pilot's chair, and the 4 supplemental slots. Now, Now, of course, you could make the argument that maybe Jeremy put that fifth slot in for himself, or maybe for Franz Hopper if they refined him, but my personal headcanon is that that fifth slot was placed there for William. Because, again, part of the whole arc for Season 4 is that they're trying to free William from Xana's influence. And if they actually succeed, then that means that William will probably become a member of their group. And so, if that day comes, there's a space in the skid for him, which I like that. I kind of just like that little forward thinking if that's true. I hoping it is true because that would actually be kind of nice. But again, just nice little detail. I like it. So yeah, pretty much they go into the skid and it's actually kind of really nice. It actually looks really impressive because we see Alita's captain slot. It looks all technological, like an actual piloting seat, and essentially Ulrich, Odd, and Yumi are all in these pods that they're kind of standing inside, and they're not as technologically advanced as Alita's, but they do. But as we learn later in the episode, they can actually split off from the skid and act as like little mini subs that they can use to fly around individually for not to maneuver on their own, be more precise, and even attack any oncoming threats. They don't, of course, they don't have as much versatility as a skid, as they can be taken out in one hit, and they can't go that far from the skid without having to return. But it's actually really nice, and I like that. But bottom line, they launch the skid from its slot, from its docking port, and they manage to get it to leave, and it's a successful launch from Sector 5 into the desert sector. After this, Jeremy is like ready to put it back as well. Dry run's over, let's go back. But the group is getting more antsy because, hey, well, come on, this whole thing is so that we can test it in the digital sea. Let's go in there. And while Jeremy is still hesitant, he does still reluctantly agree to get them in, to bring it to let them go into the digital sea. And so they go in, and so as such, that's exactly what they did. They get the skid all ready, and they get the skid all ready to go, get the shields up, and they pretty much just dive right into the sea. Like, they don't even like try it. Like, they don't even like just slowly dip in and then see if anything goes. No, it's like they're here, boom, stop just for me a second, then plop in like they're doing a cannonball. It's like, okay, someone's a bit anxious, but it's ultimately successful. The skid manages to get in. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I noticed it looked like the camera was moving, so I pushed it back. Anyway, like I was saying, they essentially they're able to traverse the digital sea, and earlier in the episode, they actually kind of explained that what the digital sea was, and I'm probably butchering this explanation right now, but essentially the digital sea was like excess runoff, so to speak, that represented links from the World Wide Web. As a result, it's pretty much everything that's part of the digital sea is connecting to some other part of the internet. It's essentially just anything. It's just essentially the sea that we see in Lyoko is just excess runoff from the World Wide Web. Kind of like if you have a program running in the background on your computer. It's just something. It's connected naturally, and now they can. It's just connected naturally to all that stuff. It's just that they can't actually utilize it. It's just like a cookie, so to speak. But pretty much they traverse the digital sea, and Jeremy allots them 5 minutes in there so that they can get their bearings. And I actually kind of like them when they explore the digital sea, as after they go further down, they essentially go through what Jeremy calls like a sewer hole or manhole. I don't know. It's like a pipeline, so to speak. But basically, they actually exit Lyoko, and from the digital and from the network, Lyoko looks like this giant dome with like one little hose coming out of it, which is where the group ends up exiting out of. As such, they actually wind up exploring the network, and I admit I actually do like the design of the network as they explore, because it kind of looks like an upside down city underwater. Like, it all looks so technologically marvelous. It's got all these weird lights representing all these different networks and hubs that all these information is stored. It's actually really nice, and the majority of it's like a calm blue and really nice, and it only makes you feel like you're exploring the ocean, but with a futuristic vibe to it, and it's actually really nice to look at and see. But but problems, of course, do arise. When the 5 minutes are loaded, Jeremy tells them, "Okay, time to come back." But when the skid's supposed to make its return trip, they end up getting an error message. It turns out that some of Jeremy's fears were confirmed because the skid's navigational systems are bugged up. And unfortunately, one of the skid's primary flaws is that it has a limited energy supply. While Jeremy could run through all the programs on the skid and figure out which ones are bugs and then debug them, unfortunately there are too many programs that keep the skid afloat. By the time he found which ones were bugged up and debugged them, the skid would end up running out of power and would essentially shut down and dissolve in the digital sea. And as we've established, once you're stuck, if you end up getting thrown into the digital sea, you are essentially trapped you're pretty much trapped. As Ilya put it, permanent virtualization. Of course, William spared from this because he's probably got Xana's influence, but whatever. But yeah, bottom line, that means that pretty much means they're metaphorically dead in the water. They can't find their way back to Lyoko because of their navigational systems, and they're now on a time limit. Ultimately, Jeremy does have a solution, as he actually does have a program that would be able to run through all the skid systems and debug them quickly. But for some dumb reason, he left them in his room. Now, he makes the excuse that, "Oh, you guys pushed me into this and we have to do the test run." But here's the thing. It's a freaking test run. The whole point of doing this is so that when you so that you can avoid problems like this in the future. Like, you go through the test run and you expect things to go, and while you want things to go smoothly, you're doing this on the off chance that something goes wrong later. That way, when the test run happens, if something goes wrong, you can fix it, do another run, and then if that's successful, then you can do regular runs. So I think that maybe, just maybe, you should factor in things possibly going wrong so that your friends don't die. What I'm saying is that this is Jeremy's fault, and if he tries to throw the blame on someone else, no, don't buy it. I don't care if they pushed him into doing this. If he was doing a test run, he should have accounted for this at some point. But whatever. Anyway, bottom line, he has to run back to his room to get the disc, but unfortunately there are still problems when he leaves the factory. During the whole fire safety thing, no one is allowed to re-enter any of the buildings, so Jeremy is effectively cut off from his room. As such, Jeremy has to kind of sneak around the campus and find other ways around the buildings, which includes climbing to the roof, doing his best not to fall off, sneaking past teachers like they were guards, and just eventually making it back until he can get his codes. But in the meantime, while he is doing this, the group is continuing to explore the digital sea. And as they go along, they come across a few oddities. For one thing, at one point as they go through the digital sea, the water turns red. Just kind of a lot dark, and which actually does add to a strange sense of unease. And as the water turns red, they look ahead and spot what looks like Lyoko. Like, it looks like the dome even has the exit onto it. And at first the group is like, "Well, cool, we found Lyoko. We guess we didn't need the navigation system." But as they drift closer to it, Aelita realizes that that's not Lyoko. And the instant she realizes that, she immediately puts the skid in reverse and runs away. And it's there that they encounter one more problem: new monsters. Specifically, these are the eels, or at least what I'm thinking they're eels. I think they call them something else, but bottom line, they're a new subset of monsters that exist exclusively in the digital sea. Essentially, their heads look like anglerfish crossed with moray eels, with the sharp teeth, the bumpy heads, and the glowing eyes, while the rest of their body consists of an blue trail of energy that represents their tail, with Xana's symbol plastered on like this pod or hump or egg or whatever, and that's located within the tail. And the instant these things see the skid, the group realizes, "Oh crap, we need to run." And that's a good call, because the eels immediately start shooting at them with lasers. Eventually, as they keep going on, they realize that this is using up a lot of energy, but they also realize that it's essentially catch-22. If the skid is destroyed by the monsters, they'll end up getting trapped in the virtual sea. But if it's not, if they don't, but as long as they're evading, they're using up more power, which means they're getting closer and closer to the skid, just going poof. Thankfully, though, Jeremy does manage to get the codes from his room, and then he manages to get back to the factory just in time, and the group tells him about the eels. As such, Jeremy launches the program, but it'll take a little time before it launches through everything, and those eels are right on their tail. As such, to try and conserve energy with the skid, Jeremy launches those little sub-skids or whatever, which allow Odd, Oric, and Yumi to fly off and fend off the eels so that the skid can properly debug itself. Which actually leads to a nice, cool firefight as they all just are swooping around the digital sea, shooting at the monsters shooting back. It's just like a nice little firefight, and they even managed to take out one. But ultimately, they do their jobs well. They're able to fend off the eels long enough for the skid to debug itself, and thus they're able to reattach and then make it back to Lyoko. As such, the episode ends with the group telling Jeremy about their discovery in the digital sea, about the monsters, and ultimately the other Lyoko, so to speak. Pausing for a second. Sorry about that, dog. But yeah, Jeremy is able to theorize that what they saw wasn't Lyoko, but was rather, essentially another digital world. A replica of Lyoko that Xana created from the data that he stole from Aelita at the end of Season 2. Sorry, the dog is right there. Which actually kind of makes sense. I'll get into it more when I'm done with the plot summary, but the group ultimately realizes that whatever this is, it probably feeds into whatever Xana's grand plan is, and that they're going to have to explore it later. So, yeah. Overall, really liked the episode. Whereas the last episode was just... One more time, I promise. Sorry about that dog being naggy. Anyway, as I was saying, I think this is a great episode. Whereas the last episode was just set up and them getting the skid ready. Here, we actually do get to see it in action, and it actually is a nice little test run. Just like the biggest strength, like there wasn't any major crises. It was just essentially a test run / intel gathering, and it's actually rather interesting. I like seeing them being launched into the skid and seeing the skid in action. When it goes off, it looks really majestic as it leaves the docking port in Sector 5 and just smoothly goes out and smoothly leaves until it goes out into the desert sector before taking a dive into the digital sea and thus allowing you to see the network. And I think that was a really breathtaking scene for the episode. Them just smoothly traveling through the network, seeing all these hubs and all these things with all the there were different strange lights for different places, different data areas. It all just looked really serene and awe-inspiring. And when things start going wrong and the sea turns from blue to red, it definitely makes you feel off. It definitely makes you feel uneasy, especially when you see the replica for the first time. Because when the light changing, you're thinking, is that Lyoko? And when you realize that it isn't, you realize you're kind of like, what the hell is that then? And then following it up with seeing the new monsters with the eels, which again look really kind of terrifying. Because you ever see a moray eel? It's really creepy. It actually looks. It helps keep up the sense of tension, especially with Jeremy not at the console and the group having to try and figure all this out for themselves. Which, getting onto the eels, I love these things. They are really unique monster designs. Again, the head is what keeps it creepy, but I love the energy tails they have. I'm a sucker for like energy powers or energy protection and stuff like that. So it was really kind of cool to see that, especially with the Xana symbol emblazoned on their tails. I thought that was really cool and kind of nice to look at. But it also continued setting up further plot threads for later. Again, showcasing that they now have a way to access the digital sea and the network so that they can actually track down Xana and figure out what he's doing. And we do get more hints at whatever the heck he's doing, such as when he created the replica of Lyoko. The group sees that and they're like, that means that's another digital world that we can now visit. And honestly, I think that's a really cool. I think that's actually kind of an interesting and rather cool idea to showcase. And kind of going off on what I was hinting at before, the idea of Xana creating a replica of Lyoko from the data he took from Aelita makes a lot of sense. Like, again, going off of what we off of season 2, what we know. When Xana stole let's say that the keys to Lyoko were like literally the building blocks of Lyoko. That Franz Hopper hid all the data that turned Lyoko into what it was inside Aelita. That would actually explain why Xana needed it. It wasn't just so that he knew how to get out of Lyoko, but so that he could use that data to further prolong his plans. Because, like, let's go, like, in the beginning of season 3, when Jeremy created that program to track down Xana, it showed that he was, like, in some other country, some other place in the world. So, but the thing is, only Lyoko has the capabilities of allowing access to the real world through the towers, because as we established, those are supposed to be like portals between the digital world and the real world. And by accessing those towers and manipulating the data inside, Xana can project himself into the real world and screw with our reality as if it were a computer. That's why he was but the thing is, a problem that we've continuously seen is that that's mostly localized. Usually any problems that Xana causes are completely localized near the factory, near Caddick, near all of that. Which means that if Xana has a bigger plan in mind, it would make sense for him to create copies of Lyoko wherever he is in the world. Essentially, it would allow him to have and it would not only allow him to have greater access to the computers and the systems, but allow him to have as much influence in those parts of the world as he did when he was trapped in the factory. That would him create and again, going by the whole idea of the keys to Lyoko were literally the building blocks, it would make sense that he'd be able to use those to create a copy of Lyoko. Because again, if we're operating under the assumption that those were literally the data that Franz Hopper used to create Lyoko, it would make that would also explain another reason why Sam would want it. Not only would it allow him to know where the back door was to get out, but it would also allow him to use that data to essentially do what the kids did at the beginning of season 4. Recreate Lyoko, his own personal copy, except without these annoying little brats that keep screwing up his plans. It would be somewhere else in the world that he could go to, screw around with the towers, mess with reality there, and continue to gather information while causing as much harm as possible. It would explain a lot, and it makes sense for him to take advantage of this. He has these things that allow him to escape into the internet, so why not use it for other stuff? It's not just a one-track thing. It actually makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really creative and smart of Xana to do, and it also opens up more possibilities. So yeah, it actually is cool and forward thinking. It makes a lot of sense for Xana to make a replica of Lyoko. So kudos on that. I like that one. And again, more strength to the episode are just kind of more little details that I like. I like seeing the skin in action, especially in battle. I love when they're going up against the eels. I love seeing the kids have their own little pods, and I thought that was really cool. And again, I liked the little detail of Jeremy creating 5 pods and 5 transporter pads, even though there's currently 4 of the group. Again, you can make the argument that maybe that's for Franz Hopper or Jeremy if he ever decides to go to Lyoko, but my personal opinion is that he created that 5th pod, that 5th space and 5th pod for William if they ever free him, which I like. It's forward thinking and just a nice little reminder they haven't forgotten about him. I like that. It's nice. So again, I also like how in a way a lot of the episode does kind of have some nice little foreshadowing for the beginning. Like, in the beginning of the episode, we saw Jeremy in gym class, and he was tasked with climbing the rock wall, but he didn't really end up doing a good job. Well, later on in the episode, they have a little callback for that. As he's sneaking around Caddick, he had to climb on the roof, and it's a nice little callback to that scene as he's now holding on for dear life as he has to navigate without falling off, which Yeah, it would be very dangerous if it would be very dangerous here because he risks more than just being caught if he falls out of that thing. So, nice little there. It's not much because it's just like like a quick callback, but it is at least nice that it is at least I'll always appreciate it when in this show when they do at least try to acknowledge the one of the B plot, or at least try and have scenes reference others later. I like that. And I suppose while I'm talking about it, this is the first episode where the majority of characters where the characters all get redesigned. And I'm not talking about like on Lyoko. I mean like in the real world. Like overall their designs in the real world are still the same. They still have the same body structure, hair, everything. But now everybody has a different change of clothes. And not just the Lyoko group, everybody. Like Sissy no longer has her hair tied up in a bow. She's now wearing like a blue t-shirt or something. Blue t-shirt or something. We see the principal wearing different clothes. We see Yumi wearing like a black shirt that allows you to see the straps of her bra. We see Aelita kind of wearing a more formal gown as her outfit. Not as her outfit. We see Odd wearing a hood. We see Odd wearing a hoodie. We see or kind of wearing a brown jacket. You can make it and Jeremy's clothes are for the most part the same. The biggest difference is that his pants have a blue line running down the side of them, and his shirt is now red. Otherwise, his design is mostly the same. But I kind of like this because it implies that this might be their winter clothes. Because even the teachers end up wearing them, and they look more. I want to say like it's more. I can't. I don't want to say conservative, but more like but more warm, so to speak. They look bulkier, not to the point where it makes them look like ugly. It's just that it looks like it just looks different. It looks like it's like every character here is preparing for winter, which again, it's not bad. It's not a big thing, but I thought I'd mention it either way because I do like the redesigns. I think they're cool. I like Jeremy's because I like red, so yeah, I just thought I'd mention it. So yeah. Overall, though, I think this is a really good episode. It's just a nice, quiet episode that continues building plot points. It's nice seeing the group taking advantage of the skid and taking it out for a test run. It's cool seeing the skid moving and being utilized. It's cool when they explore the digital sea. I like seeing Jeremy kind of doing his own thing as he tries to get the disc back, because that was a little cool. It wasn't great because that was a little cool. Again, it wasn't a lot, but take what you could. But it was still pretty cool. Not great, but good, but cool. But cool. I like the kind of the sense of tension as the group realize they might end up getting stuck there, as well as when they find the replica and they encounter more of Xana's monsters. I like that and it continues building on plot points because they now realize whatever is in that replica, they need to check it out. So I think that's cool. I'm genuinely looking forward to it. So yeah, on the whole, really good episode. Nice plot building episode. A lot of nice visuals. A lot of nice details. All these, I think overall, really good episode. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.